Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Duggan, here with Tate Phoebing.
What's up?
Resident Hearthstone expert and the man who coached me to legend. And
You're
we're
welcome.
here. Thank you. We're here to talk about the cards that we are most excited for in the Grand Tournament. We're not going to do a list of the most powerful cards in the Grand Tournament, but we will inevitably get into that discussion because I think power and also being favorite is one and the same, in a sense. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, I have Sparring Partner to start off my list as a card I'm super excited about. A 3/2 taunt that gives another minion taunt as a battle cry. I think it has a really interesting mechanic. There's a taunt warrior thing going on. I'm actually less excited about an all-out taunt warrior. I just like the idea of this as a way to stop aggro. It's a cheap taunt card, but has the ability to taunt a ton of other things. So you can throw in cheap, big health minions, give them taunt. I also like it as a way to enable Dragon Warrior, which taunts are a shortcoming in Dragon. This can help make that happen.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we'll talk about this later, but one of the largest points of feedback about the whole dragon archetype was there's no taunt dragon. And now there seems to be an overwhelming amount of taunt options for anybody who's trying to play dragon control, and that's great, I think. I'm going to kick it over to a different archetype. There are a lot of cards where, like, there's a whole archetype that they subscribe to, but that card is just good on its own, like Sparring Partner. This Druid of the Saber I am talking about specifically for the fact that I'm excited about Beast Druid. I think this card is fantastic, and I think this card is an MVP of the deck because you can bring it in as stealth, and then that will enable Druid of the Fang. But moreover, I'm just excited about the whole idea of Beast Druid because it seems to be a very effectively costed mana to power toughness ratio, kind of akin to a mono green magic, which is one of my favorite. It's just very simple and very fun. Some other cards to talk about here is Knight of the Wild, as well as Windwalker. And then I'm just excited to play with that in conjunction with something which we'll talk about later, which is more Druid ramp options, but I think the two kind of go hand in hand. And I played Druid a lot at the start of Vanilla, and I kind of haven't really touched it too much since, so I'm just excited to go back because it's always been a class that I've enjoyed. I know it's not the case for you so much.
I mean, I find Druid boring to play, mostly because there's only 2 Druid decks, so this opens up a third archetype, and I'd love to see more variety within Druid.
All right, so number 4 on your list is
Justicar Trueheart. I have seen mixed reactions to this card. I'm excited about this card because it gives a lot of things to play around with. It's not just a 6/3 with a battle cry. It's a card that is different depending on what class you play. So you essentially have 9 classes to explore with this. I'm personally excited about using it with Priest. If you get it out, having a 4 health heal every turn seems really valuable. I love the idea of seeing what other changes and mechanics can come together with a new hero power, but I just think this opens up interesting possibilities, and I'm looking forward to experimenting with it.
Yeah, this was definitely a card that came out, and it was one that you kind of had to sit down for a solid minute or two and look at all the various options. And I guess we would be remiss if we talked about this card without talking about Inspire, because that is a huge theme in this expansion. But what do you think of Justicar Trueheart in the context of Inspire? Are you excited to play her with cards that enable your hero power to be cheaper and more effective, or are you just excited for her in general?
Inspire, I think, is underwhelming on the surface, but that being said, I can see it being something that's just undervalued right now. The cards don't look great on the upfront, like right out the gate. Once you start incorporating all the tools they put together, I actually think there's potential for something interesting. So I have it on my list just because I want to try the new hero powers. I think they're super exciting.
There's quite a few options. Okay, so number 4 for me is Healing Wave. And this is kind of the token card, let's slow down the meta, or at least that's the idea here. The other thing that I'd like to point out about this card is it's, of course, Shaman exclusive, and 2 things that were kind of, both myself and I think the community were talking about were Constructed is too fast, and Shaman is underpowered. Now, I'm not going to talk about those specifically, but what I will say here is I'm just really excited that this is the most badass healing spell. It's an anti-kill bot on steroids, and you have to win a joust, so potentially opening up the gates for a cool control Shaman, which we've seen a little bit of, but usually Shaman is more of a mid-range deal. But I'm really glad this card doesn't have an overload cost associated with it.
I like it. Shamans can heal in WoW. Finally, they can heal in Hearthstone. Makes a lot of sense. They really struggle with Hunter because they have no way to pick their health back up. I mean, Healbot solves some of that, but I think this replaces Healbot and Shaman's decks 100%.
Excellent. All right, let's move to your number 3 spot, which was
Garrison Commander. It doesn't look super exciting. It's just a 2/3, but use your hero power twice. This falls into my desire to experiment with Inspire. I think there's a lot of really cool mechanics. Juskar Trueheart in this guy, we just talked about her, being able to heal 8 for 4 mana with a Priest, and I think this is more of just an enabling card that makes other cards potentially way better. So that's why I have it on here.
And this is something that is in the Brawl right now that you can check out before. It's kind of like the pre-release event, if you will. And it's something that I played around with a lot. And I think when they started to roll out the whole Inspire mechanic and just cards from the set in general, people were pretty underwhelmed. But I think if Inspire is going to be a thing, the thing that you need to keep in mind about these cards is each Inspire minion or hero power focused minion you put on the board exponentially increases the value of the other ones. Good examples of that would be Maiden of the Lake, Fallen Hero. Are these cards constructed playable? That has yet to be determined, but I absolutely agree, having played the Mage in the Brawl, that yeah, I'm excited for it now, because using your hero power multiple times a turn is super fun, especially when it's doing 2 or 3 damage and summoning spells for you with Nexus Champion Sarad and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's an enabler, and without it, I don't think Inspire is as powerful.
So this is a card that I initially forgot kind of to put on my list, and Tate and I had a little bit of a powwow, and we rigged our lists in the sense that we didn't want to overlap on a card, and he brought up Polymorph Boar, which I was like, oh my god, yes. I love this card for so many reasons, but Tate, you were the one who initially brought this up, so why don't you tell us why you think it's such a brilliantly designed card?
Yeah, of all the cards I've seen, I think this one has probably one of the best designs just because of the versatility. It can be used as kind of like a silency removal to turn a big legend with a death rattle into a boar, and
like
then
Tyrion or something.
Yeah,
right?
and then deal with it with your hero power. It's extra damage if you're trying to rush someone down. You can attack with the minion, make it a boar attack again. It's so versatile. I think it's just a brilliant design. I can't wait to see what people do with it.
Right, and I love the Huffer flavor text. This is another thing that's in the Brawl, and it's just an absolute blast to use. Whenever I draw it, I'm not disappointed because, just like you said, there's a lot of versatility there. And also, just the default Polymorph is kind of included in constructed decks when the game first came out, but has kind of fallen out of favor, maybe because it's just too high-costed. But I would love to see where this fits into the meta, if at all, and it's certainly something I'll be experimenting with.
Yeah, this card I'm the second most excited about. I've fallen in love with Priest as like my favorite class to play. The most ridiculous things happen between Thought Steals and crazy heal combos where you draw a bunch of cards. But Confessor Paletris is the Inspire card I'm most interested in. Inspire, summon a legendary minion, so it's 7 to get out, 9 mana, you get this plus another legendary. I think that's just really interesting. Combine this with using your hero power multiple times. I just see scenarios where this can create such a fun circumstance where you play this card and then you blow out the board with legendaries. I think that's just awesome, and I'm excited to play with it because so far the Priest legendaries have been not terrible but not great, and this one could be that. It could be kind of middle of the road, might work in some decks, not others, but I think it's just super interesting and a fun mechanic to play around with.
So let me ask you a question about this card. So like you said, there's a lot of scenarios. Some are very good, some are Lore Walker Cho, which again could be interesting. But what do you think about RNG as kind of something that has become more prevalent in the Hearthstone design? We're seeing it with cards like Spellslinger, with the Hunter card that you bring in if you have a beast. It'll just bring a totally random beast into play, and it can be something that's absolutely terrible, and it can be something that changes the game and makes you win. Do you like that, or do you think that that's a little bit cheap design?
It depends on... I think there's good RNG and bad RNG. I relate Hearthstone to poker a lot, and if poker had no RNG, no one would play it. So I think some of it needs to be there. Some cards are clearly meant to just be random and fun. Constructed is all about minimizing RNG in your favor. Yeah, I think I'm warming up to it the more I play this game and the more I approach it as a way to have fun. I'm not trying to make money off of it, so getting a bad result from randomness devastating to me. But
That being said, having been on Skype with Tate while we play, both of us will definitely rage when we do an implosion and it lands too. It just happens. All right, so my number 2 pick is Darnassus Aspirant, and this was the card that when the expansion was announced, I was playing, I was doing my dailies in ranked XYZ, and I was kind of had apathetic feelings towards the expansion so far, but when I saw this card, I was like, okay, this is the first card that I am absolutely excited to try. And this harkens back to that whole mono green thing and ramp, and it's always been something that I've always loved. This, along with Wild Growth, I think both of these go in the same deck, and I love that now I have the potential to draw 4 cards that are just going to put me ahead in the mana curve.
I actually don't know if I agree that this belongs in the same deck as Wild Growth, but I think it opens up some mid-range Druid options that don't exist right now. Druid is either token or rush or ramp into huge minions. I think this is the card that puts a possible mid-range Druid into play, because at some point in the game you're going to be looking at like 2 4-mana turns, 2 5-mana turns in a row, and that means that you can kind of play your deck around those mana costs more heavily, like if you're going to be efficient. So I actually see this possibly opening up outside. Maybe it's Beast, maybe it's something else, but a more mid-rangey Druid, and I think that's really interesting. To be clear, I think the card's amazing.
Right.
I'm just not sold on like super ramp.
And I think the combo in Druid is just so powerful that it's hard to create a deck without it. Other cards that are also Druid specific that kind of not compete with this, but are in the same vein. Astral Communion. That's a card that I'm very interested to see if it works. That being said, I don't think it will, just because discarding your hand is really, really difficult against aggro to come back from. And then Mulch, I'm really excited for, just kind of as an honorable mention, because it's cheap removal that is effective. And that's something that Druid, despite swipe, kind of lacks.
Yep.
So, all right, the moment of truth. What is your number 1 pick?
The card I'm most excited about, I mentioned it earlier, like I love the dragon archetype, but it's very lackluster. It doesn't have a taunt. So Twilight Guardian is the card that answers all these criticisms. 4 mana, 2/6. If you have a dragon, it gains +1 attack and taunt. So a 3/6 taunt for 4 mana. That's more efficient than what's the guy? The Swampling guy.
I'm not going to come up with it.
Fen Creeper.
Fen Creeper, there you go. Beautiful golden card, by the way. One of my favorite.
It's more efficient than Fen Creeper if you have a dragon. If you're building a deck around dragons, you can kind of plan on that having it. Dragons suffer to aggro. This solves that, so it really opens up a lot of potential dragon decks that don't exist today. Right now, it's all Paladin and maybe a little bit of Mage, but this kind of opens it to every class.
And I love that this is neutral. Card pool, I can put it in my Paladin Dragon deck, which I've been in love with, except for the fact that it doesn't have a taunt. This can enable Blackwing Technician. But just very quickly talking about a card that is specific to a class that is kind of in the same vein.
I mean, Dragon Priest is the thing I mentioned. I love Priest. I'm super excited to make a Dragon Priest deck. Wormrest Agent, which could be a 2/4 taunt for 2 mana if you're holding a dragon. Exact same thing. You need more taunts in the dragon world. That's a cheap one. Our cheap good taunts don't exist, so a 2/4 taunt for 2 mana is awesome.
Right.
So.
And then also Chilma, I think, is worth mentioning. He's interesting. I am not 100% sold on him, but I really like the fact that he only deals damage to minions and not everybody, like... not Sludge Belcher, the other one. Abomination, yes, exactly, which is kind of like, you're trying to come back from... an early deficit to aggro, and then you get hit in the face for 2. So, but this, I don't know, maybe Chilma, but regardless, like we said, there's a lot of options with Sparring Partner, Twilight Guardian, Wormrest Agent, and Chilma now. So, Dragons with Taunt, yes, they're a thing. All right, my number 1 pick is a card that is, in a recent poll, it was the most hyped card. Everybody was the most excited for it, and I'm absolutely part of that demographic. Varian Wrenn. I think the absolute dream is, of course, when you're kind of getting to close to that fatigue stage, you don't have a lot of cards in hand, and your opponent doesn't either. You're relying on top decks. You pull this, and then you get 2 8/8s or something, and it's just game over. And I think that Varian Wrenn is very similar to Aviana, as well as Confessor Pale's Triss. But I would argue that Varian Wrenn is the most effective iterations of this. I feel as though this is a one-stop shop. Worst case scenario, you have a 7/7, you draw 3 cards. Best case scenario, you just absolutely unload with a whole bunch of bombs. You get Ragnaros in there, you get Kel'Thuzad, whoever, and unless they have a quality Consecrate, there's just no coming back from that. Thoughts?
I mean, I refuse to say anything bad about this card. I think it's clearly one of the best cards in the expansion. It's going to create some ridiculous turns.
Yeah.
And it's going to be awesome to see what it does. I hope the animation is incredible.
Excellent. In summation, Tate, you and I both kind of expressed apathy when this expansion got announced, and for the weeks following when they were kind of like trickling out cards, and we were like, well, whatever. Now that we're a couple days away from release, what do you think? Are you excited?
Yeah, I couldn't be more excited. The archetypes I want to explore are there. I have a list on my laptop of 9 different decks I want to try to create. I'm not gonna net deck for a full season. I'm gonna see what I can come up with on my own, and there's just so much fun stuff here to try to do. Like, this is the best time to play Hearthstone, is when there's a whole set of new cards and no one knows what's good.
Agreed. Love it. I've pre-ordered. You held out until the final days. But
Yep.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for all things Hearthstone and the Grand Tournament, keep it right here on IGN.